The most powerful and unstable first stuff for solo and duo PvP. Chill Howl is sniper in corrupted dungeons and Mist. Many skips fights with frost players, thinking it's a weapon for low skill players, but they don't realize that one mistake on frost can cost them their life. On the agenda, the use of this stuff in solo and duo Mists, as well as in corrupted dungeons and hardcore expedition. Skills and builds, what make this stuff powerful, why this stuff is unstable, a couple of tips, and at the end a showcase fights in duo Mists. About the skills. In solo and duo PvP, the primary goals of a frost player are to kite the opponent if they have equal or higher item power. If the opponent item power is lower, the goal is not to let them escape. The use of the first Q ability is situational. In corrupted dungeons we use it 100% of the time, while in Mist it's better to use the third Q, since it slows enemies, making it easier to catch up with opponents. The second Q, it is used for PvE. For PvP in Mist, I recommend using the third Q as it's easier to hit enemies as it deals area damage and also slows the target by 20% on hit. The W ability is always Blink, used either to escape or to chase down enemies, as well as to dodge ultimates with instant damage like the Curse, Crossbow, Bloodletter and so on. The other W abilities are less effective, with a full breakdown covered in the video about the Perma Prism. Now the most interesting part. The ability of Chill Howl creates a small radius field that slows all enemies within it. If the target is an ally, they will be instantly frozen for 2 seconds. If the target is an enemy, they will be frozen after 1.1 seconds for 2 seconds, if they don't leave the field in time. Frozen targets are immune to damage and healing. After the freeze, the crystal explodes, dealing damage to all enemies within the field's radius. There is also about 1 in 100 chance that the crystal will not deal damage to an enemy after the explosion. This isn't mentioned in the ability description, but it has happened to me several times throughout my gameplay. Now a question for the developer, is this a bug or a hidden feature? From the passive we always take the first one, which after every few spell cast your next auto attack roots the target enemy by 1 second. Build for solo and duo Mist PvP. Any plate boots will do for running and healing. I use Boots of Valor because they provide higher AP, and they are crafted from an artifact, plus they come with a defensive passive. Assassin Jacket provides invisibility for 7 seconds and increases your damage by 4% every 0.5 seconds while you are invisible, stacking up to 10 times. If you deal damage or move more than 15 meters from the point where you implied invisibility, you will be revealed. Always prioritize the passive for cooldown reduction. In the Mist, everyone is on their own, so you might face multiple opponents at once. The invisibility from the jacket will help you avoid unwanted fights, especially if someone joins your battle to finish you off. In the uphand, use Mist Color for cooldown reduction. The Undead Cape is a good additional save. Another invisibility can save your life more than once. It activates invisibility for 6 seconds when your health drops below 15%. For solo Mist, use the Cowl of Purity. It shoots a beam at 18 meters, interrupts enemy spells and deals periodic damage over 2 seconds. It's perfect for kiting. Don't forget put a passive ability on damage. For duo Mist, use either the Cowl of Purity or the Stalker's Hood. I personally prefer the Stalker's Hood for duo Mists. It buffs your damage by 15% for 4 seconds and reveals invisible enemies within 6 meter radius. If the affected enemy has less than half of their HP, their damage resistance is reduced by a certain amount depending on the item power of the hood. Additionally, versus one-shot builds you can use Cleansing. I always prefer the cooldown reduction passive. For your consumables, use either an omelette or Deadwater Eel Stew, depending on your budget. T7 omelette increases heal recovery speed. It's a budget-friendly option. T8 Deadwater Eel Stew provides a smaller cooldown buff but increases your damage. This is the best choice for Frost, but it's quite expensive. You can substitute it with a T6 Red Spring Eel Stew or an omelette. Health potions are used for solo Mist and corrupted dungeons. For duo Mist, use health potions and cleansing potions to counter one-shot builds. Build for corrupted dungeons. Unlike the Mist, here it's 1 version 1 PvP, and winning HP trade is crucial. Cultist drops heals for 7.5% of your maximum HP and 5 of your maximum mana over 4.5 seconds, while increasing your damage resistance based on the rope's tier. Run away from the opponent so they can't interrupt the cast and heal yourself a bit. Mist Color in your hand for cooldown reduction. Any plate boots. Choose between Cowl of Purity or Hunter Hood. Hunter Hood increases your resistance and reflects 85% of incoming damage for 3 seconds. Cowl of Purity is for those who prefer kiting, while Hunter Hood is for more aggressive play. Lumhurst Cape to prevent running out of mana. For consumables, use Omelets and Health Potion. Build for Hardcore Expeditions. Hardcore Expedition is PvE content, where damage dealers need to pour damage into stationary mobs, as they don't attack us, except for AoE skills that fly in all directions. Therefore, we need a build with the maximum damage output, and we can neglect survivability. On Chill Howl, set the following abilities. Second Q to deal AoE damage. Force W, it also deals AoE damage and reduces enemies' resistance to damage. Third passive for faster cast speed, allowing you to cast the second Q more quickly. Mobs may switch aggro from the tank to the damage dealers if you deal too much damage, so we'll need Phase Scale Sandals and Calming Potion for resetting your aggro priority with the mobs. Royal Rope lays down a small area that buffs damage and spell casting speed for up to 6 allies. Royal Cowl to prevent running out of mana. Crypt Candle gives a bonus to both magical and physical abilities while reducing your defense. Morgana Cape greatly enhances the second Q. It activates when you use your E ability, buffing cast speed and attack speed. Use Omelets for cooldown reduction and cast speed. About the instability of the staff. Apart from the fact that many Q, W and E skills or boots can be used to escape from the Chill Howl's E ability, there are times when the staff simply won't free the target or its E won't deal damage, again a question for the developers. Now the staff's main strength. The staff has a high cutting potential, thanks to its ability and link, which allows it to defeat opponents with higher AP. Tricks and mechanics. To prevent enemies from dodging or escaping your E, you can free them with a blink first. Stand very close to your opponent, press E and immediately blink on top of them. This way you'll stun them for about 1.5 seconds, making it harder for them to avoid being frozen. A mounted player can usually escape the area of the ability, but if you stack your passive and land an auto attack that roots the target for 1 second, they won't have enough time to escape the E and will end up frozen. Now let's have a demonstration fight in Duo Mists. First fight against 2 Axes. After checking their builds, we naively assumed they wouldn't want to fight us and would start running away. Because of this, we recklessly rushed in. However, they activated their buffs and my partner ended up taking almost all the damage from their skills, losing the health trait. At that point, we decided to back off and keep our distance using our abilities while waiting for our save skills cooldowns. But while we were retreating and waiting to cool down, the rivals figured out our plan and started going back. We had no choice but to chase them down and switch to an aggressive strategy to prevent them from escaping. We began close fight again, but my partner's jackets didn't come off cooldowns in time for him to dodge the E from the Great Axe, and unfortunately he died. Now I was left 1v2, and since I had just used my energy potion, I had no other healing options except the rose buff. My only chance was to catch them in a mistake. Well, that's exactly what happened. They simply kept chasing me while I pocketed them with my skills on the retreat, barely taking any damage myself. One of them was already low HP, and I could see my opportunity. I rushed in too aggressively, trying to finish him off, but I almost lost all my health. Fortunately, the buff of the rose healed me a bit. Now it was a 1 version 1, both of us with almost no health left. He misused his reflect skill, and I managed to freeze him with my E. Thinking the fight was over, for style I decided to finish him with my blink. But just as blinking, he managed to hit me with his Q, applying a bleed effect. Fortunately, he died from my hit before I bleed out. Now it's victory. I could have played this much better, but luck was on my side. I looted everything and returned to the city victorious.